Hello, everybody. Welcome to Reserve Seating. We are back just like Axel Foley. But
Wordplay, baby.
whose return is better, ours or Eddie Murphy as Axel Foley's? That's for you to decide and for us to discuss on this
Reserve
week's
seating starts
Reserve
right
Seating.
now.
So let's start before we get into the new movie.
Yes.
Rob, what is your history with the Beverly Hills Cop franchise, and are you a fan consistently through the first three entries, or are you kind of more I like one, I like two, no three? Like, where are you coming from
Is there a
going
third
into
option? What if I like three, but not the first two? I think the first one is pretty unimpeachable. I think it's pretty amazing. I just rewatched in preparation for this new one. I just rewatched the first two. I did not rewatch the third one only because I'd have to pay to rent it, and I didn't want to do that. The first one is just it's one of those lightning in a bottle movies, and there are lots of the history has been gone over. It was a stolen vehicle and all that stuff. We don't have to get into all that, but that first Beverly Hills Cop is just it's just so electric and it's just so fun. The second one is like a totally good Tony Scott movie. It's like totally fine. I don't think it's nearly as fun or as I should say, I don't think it's as good in the same way that the first one is. It's much more of an action comedy than a comedy action movie.
Mhm.
But I like it well enough. And I sort of alluded to this in my review of Axel F. I think that there's an opportunity with a legacy sequel like this, where if you have something to say with a character like a Maverick or a Rocky Balboa, there is opportunity. I don't think this movie really cares about that. I don't think it's the same kind of movie as a Creed or a Maverick. I think it does more or less what I expected it to do, especially with Eddie's, output like You People and other things like that that just have not really been top shelf. I wasn't expecting very much. I don't know. What
I am a really big fan of the first Beverly Hills Cop. It's like a movie that's transcendently good where you could even watch it on AMC edited and it's great.
totally.
So it's just very clever writing, lightning in a bottle performance. It does what I really like in action comedies when they don't skimp on the action. Like the action has to work. And from like that opening chase at the beginning of the first one, it's just like, oh, this is like a good car chase, and like there's good stunt work, and they care about the action, and it sort of like settles you in
Mhm.
because you can hang as many jokes as you want on a solid action movie, but you can't half-ass action in a laugh fest linerama type movie. So I always credit it for that. Two, I've never really warmed to as much as most people do. I don't count it as one of my favorite Tony Scott movies. It's
Oh,
a movie that I could watch at any time, but I'm never like jumping at the chance to do it. I love the look of it, but a lot of what worked in one is missing in two. Three, I grew up with. That was probably the first Beverly Hills Cop movie I ever saw because I was 12 when it came out. And the fact that it was set at like an amusement park, like garnered my interest. So I always was like pretty forgiving of three, although the last time I watched it as an adult, I was like, oh, this is as bad as everybody says that it is. It's, like a real energy vacuum. There's not a lot going on there. I was excited for four because I was excited of I was hopeful. I shouldn't have been because Coming to America was so terrible.
yeah.
I didn't even bother with You People, but I'm always like holding the carrot for like, oh, well, it could be a Dolomite is my name. And
So
that's really good. And that's among one of the better Netflix movies.
it's the problem with Eddie Murphy is you can't ever really count him out because every now
No,
and again he'll make a Dolomite is my name and he's like, where's this guy been?
I will say I think I like it less than Beverly Hills Cop 3.
Okay.
Um, although it's maybe more competently made, it's I don't there's a thing that's going on with action movies right now,
Yes.
and I need to get up on my soapbox about
Do it.
this. Uh, I can't think of a better way of phrasing it other than the pussification of action movies. I mean, I don't mean to label it as the coarsest way possible, but what I'm calling it is there's a certain lack of movies having balls.
Yeah.
Uh,
I like that you put it in a different, equally undelicate way.
but when you look at Fast and Furious,
Yeah.
it's all about family and it's all about like let's get the kids involved in blowing up a bad guy's cars. And then you got Bad Boys movies where it's all about like, hey, we need to have just as many family hangout scenes as
Right.
opposed to just being about cops. And like we've got introductions of Joe Pantoliano's granddaughter now. And I'm just like, what are we doing? And same thing with Beverly Hills Cop 3, where it's to a lesser extent, but like the middle act of this movie is so bogged down by like the estranged relationship between
Which
Eddie
is not.
Murphy
Yeah.
and Taylour Paige, who I don't think has done any favors by this movie because she's
No.
so good in movies where she's the lead, but
Yes.
or a lead. But in this one, they just give her plot device work to do with no opportunity to shine on her own as a performer. Um, but I think these movies are very tame in terms of attitude, where I want my action movies to be at the level of um energy and the level of not mean spiritedness, but just sort of like aggressiveness as like at least Running Scared 1986.
I I think I know what you mean, and I'm trying as you're talking, I'm trying to think of like there are a couple of factors at play. One, we're talking about franchises starring people now in their 50s and 60s, right? When
Yeah,
we're thinking about even Fast and Furious now, right?
yeah,
Two, we're talking about Netflix and streaming services making these would-be blockbusters, but not really having the balls, to use your parlance, the balls,
sure. Yeah,
uh, to to make interesting action movies for action movie fans. They're
yeah,
making action movies. They're making action comedies for everyone. Because
yes.
everything on Netflix has to be for everyone. You know what I mean? It's something that
Not
has to
just that.
sit
Yeah, and you see it in theaters too. Like I went to see Godzilla
right.
versus Kong or the New Empire,
New Empire.
and there's a trailer for Despicable Me 4 right after a trailer for Civil War. Everything is a homogenized single audience now.
And that represents a desperation in the industry overall.
Yeah, and it's like if I'm looking at the listing for my local drive-in,
Right.
it's not weird for them to be playing like Inside Out 2 followed by Bad Boys 4. Movies where people are getting shot in the head are somehow now just sort of like, I don't know, it's for the older kids. Yeah, I just want to have a lane for action movies and a lane for family movies and not have them interspersed as much because I don't know. I just want to see bad boys doing bad boy things. I just want to see like Axel Foley doing Axel Foley things. Like I don't and where the movie lot where Beverly Hills Cop Axel F lost me. It wasn't it right from the outset. Like from the beginning, I was just like, okay, this is you start out with like a good chase scene.
Right.
I'm on board. My goodwill is here. But it was around like the second act when they're like doing they're kind of blustering with like somebody to get into like an impound lot.
Yeah.
And the guy has like a poster for Jupiter Ascending behind him. And then he's like, oh, I love Jupiter Ascending. But then the joke is just like, you see, so Taylour Paige tells Eddie Murphy, she's like, what was your favorite part of Jupiter Ascending? And then he goes, and then there's Jupiter. And then it's ascending. And I'm just like, you're not respecting my intelligence. Like, this is lazy and this is desperate and this is meant to elicit laughs out of the dumbest audiences, and I felt insulted in that regard. And then I would get back on board for certain things towards the middle and end of the movie. Like I think the helicopter set piece is really well done.
Yeah.
but overall, it's just kind of like it feels like a product of everything that's wrong with action movies now, which Beverly Hills Cop 3 didn't feel representative of anything. It just was a bad sequel.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no, like I said, and again, you can, my review is on the site. You can read it. I didn't mind this movie. I liked it more than what was in my head from Beverly Hills Cop 3. Again, I'd have to go back and rewatch 3, which I haven't done. But it is just a fairly flat, conventional Netflix movie that will get, as I said, just it's there to get lost in the carousel. It's there to, whenever I think about movies now, even in Netflix movies and movies in general, I think about when, you know how, like, if you're on a streamer and you're clicking through and you're doing the carousel game and you're like flipping through to see what you want to watch, and you'll
Sure.
have, let's say, 4 or 5 different rows, and you're flicking through each row and it's like sci-fi movies for you, movies you think you'll like, based on your blah blah blah. And each one is, in theory, a different group of movies, but you notice that the algorithm has sorted them so that, let's say overall there's 50 choices, there's
Mhm.
really only 30 movies there. They've just been sorted and resorted into different things based on some kind of algorithmic projection. Um,
Yeah.
that's what I feel like when I see these movies now, where it's like this was made to fit in as many of those rows as possible. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt has no, there's nothing, just like Taylour Paige, who we loved. I mean, I love Zola. I thought she was great in
Yeah.
that. She's given this emotional arc that never really matters. It doesn't really have anything to do with it. It's one of those things where it feels like story. Again, I allude to this sometimes in reviews where I'll kind of talk about something that the movie is doing to make you think it has a story. Like, oh, there's this plot line between the daughter and Axel, and are they going to resolve it? But like, one, we didn't meet this character until this movie. Two, progressing in that plot line is not forcing Axel to address serious character flaws that we've seen him have for 3 movies before this. And
Yeah.
that you would need to overcome in order for this particular storyline to resolve.
Well, it's a dumb storyline with the estranged relationship between the daughter and the father because it puts Taylour Paige as an actor in a position to be almost antagonistic with the audience because all we want to do is enjoy Eddie
Exactly.
Murphy.
Yes.
And like, so it's like she's the one person playing defense to like this offensive player that we are all invested in. So it's like up to her, even though she's got issues, to get like to stop being a stick in the mud. And it's a weird, like, I think I heard Tom Cruise talk about this because he's so smart in terms of like audience perception of character and story and stuff. And I think I forgot what this anecdote was from, but he said something like, you can't have a character who hates the character that everybody loves
Right.
because all they'll do is hate that character because and that's sort of what I'm dealing with here. And I don't know. I mean, Judge Reinhold and John Ashton are not given anything really meaningful to do in the movie. So it's just basically like him, those two, Bronson Pinchot, it's just they pop up, they kind of say hello, and
Nostalgia.
it's like the convention appearance as a performance. I wish they got more juice out of Kevin Bacon as the villain. I felt like
Yeah.
they like in part three, they had I think Timothy Carthart as the main villain, who's a fine character actor, but it's like if you're gonna have Kevin Bacon as your villain, make him Philip Seymour Hoffman in Mission Impossible 3. Don't make him Timothy Carthart in Beverly
Yeah.
Hills Cop. It's like I'm not even disappointed. It just is sort of like such a product of like what action comedy is right now or what action movies are. It's just like these big family affairs, and I just want them to kind of be. I just rewatched Out for Justice.
Yeah.
I just want them to be out for justice again. I have a question for you because I've heard this theory posited because
Mhm.
of like it only coming out on Netflix and not being released in theaters. Certain people are like critics in their reviews will say like, "Oh, they should have released this in theaters. It would have made like a ton of money." And I don't
Yeah.
necessarily believe that. I feel like it kind of like is perfect for Netflix where like you've got a captive audience of people who are already subscribing to a service.
Yeah.
But if this was released in theaters, I don't think it does much better than like $50 million in total domestic. It's
I don't
like,
think the action in this movie is particularly good. I mean, we've talked about this before in terms of, oh, I want to see this in a theater. And there are movies where I will admit it's like, oh, that would have been great in a theater. It would have been
yeah,
really fun to see this. But this movie is made to watch on cell phones. It's not, the action in this isn't particularly good. It's not particularly creative or expressive. I don't think there's anything dynamic really about the way this movie is shot. It's all flat. I think that I can understand from an industry perspective where they might be coming from, because
mm,
a lot of critics were kids when they saw Beverly Hills Cop and they saw it in a theater. And so
yeah.
they would have liked that nostalgia. The idea of taking a 12-year-old to see this movie in a theater, assuming they hadn't seen the other ones, and saying, like, we're going to have this great theatrical experience, I don't think this movie makes that argument at all.
Yeah, I wonder if, say, in a year from now, if people consider this as a movie that exists or not,
Yeah.
like in the Beverly Hills Cop franchise, or if it's just going to be like memory hold and like it's just like, oh, there were three Beverly Hills Cop movies, and then it's like, oh yeah, there was that thing on Netflix, like it's like the Wet Hot American Summer TV series. It's
Right.
just like maybe it's just a general malaise that I have with movies in theaters or on streaming combined right now. But like I saw Maxine, uh, and I saw it with Mike from F This Movie, and we both were disappointed.
Mm.
But after it was over, like for a movie that I thought was bad, being a sequel to two movies that I had as number one and number six on my top 10 list, do you think I would be like way more disappointed?
Right.
But I was more like, okay, what am I having for dinner now? Like it was just kind of like, well, that didn't work. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm trying to think about it, that in the sort of the meta game here, macro thinking, like in terms of the industry in general and movies in general and what I'm being
Yeah.
offered in general. And it's just like, make your Axel Fs, make your ride or dies, get all, like, obviously these movies start in development years before we see them, and
Yeah.
they follow certain trends and they follow certain ideas, or they address certain would-be perceived needs that an audience is having, or an audience interest that a focus group is perceiving, or something like that, or we're fulfilling contract obligations, whatever it is we're doing with these. um, but there are interesting enough movies coming out in the margins where I've, as I said, kind of just accepted that mainstream four quadrant movies are going to be lost for a little while.
Mhm.
And if some of them are okay, like I said, as I said with my Ride or Die review, where I'm just like, 3-star movies held the industry up for a long time, and maybe I should just be thankful that we're getting them, and I'll look for my inspiration elsewhere. I don't know. It's not hopelessness. It's not cynicism. It's just like a that exists alongside things I'm more interested in. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm having more trouble like trying to couch the movie industry in theories right now. It's
Yeah.
more just like there's exceptions to the rule to the degree where it's just like there are no rules. It's just like sometimes things work and sometimes they don't work, and it's not really like a grand statement about anything.
I agree.
So I don't know. I mean, like hell, like, and I can't even like dictate what I like and what I don't like very well anymore. Like I like Horizon Part One, I enjoyed the hell out of, but it's like an unproofread paper turned in. Like it's not a well-made movie in my opinion, but it's a movie I enjoyed a great deal.
Yeah.
Whereas there are movies that are like perfectly know what they're doing and they abide by the formula, and I'm just like, well, that was garbage. So we will be back next week. I hope you liked certain gripes that we had, because we're going to be doing more of those next week with our annual Gripe House show, where
Yes.
Rob and I talk about a couple things a piece that are grinding our gears in either the movie industry or specific movies themselves. So
As
until
George
next
Carlin
time.
used to say, a list of things that are pissing me off.
So until next time.
Ba, 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 ba. How about how they used all three of those songs in the most obnoxious, like, sort of just inconsequential? They just like shoved them in there. It's like, yeah, there's Shakedown.